In a small-town gym, a quiet janitor pushes his mop across the floor, just another forgotten face in the crowd. But when the spotlight turns his way, he soars higher than anyone thought possible, stunning an NBA rookie and shaking the whole community to its core. He's not just a janitor, he's a single father, fighting every day to give his daughter a chance at a better life. But just as doors begin to open, the past he tried to bury comes roaring back, along with powerful people who believe he's not good enough to raise his own child. And when a silent CEO finally speaks in flawless Japanese, the truth revealed could either save everything or destroy the only family he has left. What happens when one man's hidden strength collides with the world's harshest judgment? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The squeak of basketball shoes against polished hardwood echoed through Maple Ridge High's gymnasium. Eli Bennett guided his mop across the sideline with practiced efficiency, careful to keep the wet floor sign visible to any players who might dash past. The familiar scent of pine cleaner mixed with the energetic atmosphere of game night. The bleachers were packed tonight, a sea of red and gold, their school colors. Parents, students, and community members had turned out in force for the charity exhibition. Even Mayor Thompson sat in the front row, his campaign button gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Eli glanced up at the scoreboard, where the girls' team was holding their own against the alumni squad. His gaze drifted to the stands where Maya sat with her friends, her dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. She caught his eye and gave a small wave, which he returned with a gentle smile. At 14, she was growing more like her mother every day. Same quiet determination, same thoughtful eyes. The school band, positioned in their usual corner, launched into another peppy number as the boys' varsity team filed in for their upcoming dunk contest. Among them stood D.C. Cole, the NBA rookie who'd graduated from Maple Ridge just last year. He commanded attention in his designer warm-ups, signing autographs for wide-eyed middle schoolers. "Looking good out there, Mr. Bennett," called out Jenny Martinez, one of the sophomore players, as she jogged past. Eli nodded appreciatively. He'd seen her practicing alone in the gym many mornings before school, working on her jump shot with quiet persistence. The current game wrapped up, and Coach Ruth's whistle pierced the air. "All right, clear the court. Dunk contest in 5. Her voice carried authority even over the band's brass section. Eli worked his way along the baseline, ensuring no wet spots remained. He'd learned long ago that a single slip could end a season, or worse. The mop moved in smooth, methodical strokes, each sweep as important as the last. "Hey, we're one short," Coach Williams called out, counting the varsity players gathering for the dunk contest. "Marcus has the flu, and we need even numbers for the photo op with DC." The crowd murmured as the coaches huddled, discussing alternatives. Eli kept working, though he could feel the tension in the air. These events meant a lot to the school's fundraising efforts, and they needed everything to go perfectly. That's when the first call came from the stands. "How about the janitor?" Eli's hands tightened on the mop handle, but he didn't look up. He'd learned to let comments roll off his back years ago. "Yeah, let the janitor try." Another voice joined in, followed by scattered laughter. The gym grew quieter as more heads turned his way. Even the band stopped playing, the last notes of their fight song fading into awkward silence. "Mr. Bennett?" Coach Ruth's voice cut through the tension. She stood there, holding a pair of basketball shoes. "We could use another participant. Would you be willing?" Eli straightened up slowly, aware of every eye in the gymnasium fixed on him. In the stands, Maya sat forward, her expression a mix of concern and something else. Hope, maybe. "I haven't played in a while, Coach," he said quietly, but she was already walking toward him with the shoes. "These should fit. They're Marcus's spare pair." She spoke softly, so only he could hear. "Show them what matters isn't the uniform you wear, but the heart you bring." Eli looked down at the shoes, then up at the basket. The same basket he'd spent countless early mornings under, rebounding for Maya as she worked on her shooting form. The same basket where he'd taught Jenny Martinez the proper follow-through for her free throws, while he was supposed to be cleaning the bleachers. DC Cole stepped forward, his usual confident smile in place. "Come on, Mr. Bennett. One dunk, that's all we need for the photos." The crowd had started a low chant. "Bennett, Bennett." Eli carefully set his mop against the wall and took the shoes from Coach Ruth. He sat on the bench, removed his work boots, and laced up the borrowed sneakers. They fit perfectly, like they were meant for this moment. As he stood, he caught Maya's eye again. She gave him a thumbs up, her face glowing with pride. Whatever happened next, that look made it worthwhile. The players lined up for the contest, with DC Cole taking center stage. The NBA rookie executed a flashy windmill dunk that brought the crowd to its feet. Other varsity players followed with their best attempts, some successful, others drawing good-natured groans. Then it was Eli's turn. "Let's make this interesting," DC announced, positioning himself near the basket. "I'll stand here. Let's see what the Janitor's got." The challenge was clear. Dunk over the 6'4" athlete. The crowd grew silent, anticipation building. Eli took a deep breath, bounced slightly on the balls of his feet. The sneakers felt light, familiar. He hadn't done this in years, not since. "You got this, Dad." Maya's voice rang out clear and strong. Someone threw a lob, the ball arcing high above the court. Eli's muscle memory took over. 3 quick steps, gathering momentum. His legs coiled with stored energy, then released. He rose up, higher than anyone expected, caught the ball at its apex with both hands. Time seemed to slow down. DC Cole's confident smile faltered as Eli soared over him, the ball cocked back in his hands. The crowd inhaled collectively, phones raised to capture the moment. Then Eli slammed the ball through the hoop with authority, the force making the entire backboard shake. He hung on the rim for a moment, the gym frozen in disbelief, before dropping gracefully back to the court. The silence lasted for exactly 1 second. Then the gym exploded. Students poured out of the bleachers. The band struck up the fight song. Camera flashes lit up the space like lightning. Maya's friends were screaming and hugging her as she beamed with pride. DC Cole stood there stunned for a moment, then broke into a genuine grin. He grabbed Eli's arm and raised it like a referee announcing a boxing champion. The crowd's roar grew even louder. "Bennett, Bennett, Bennett." Coach Ruth appeared at his side, her eyes sparkling. "How would you like to help out at girls' practices?" she asked, barely audible over the chaos. Before Eli could respond, Maya had pushed through the crowd and thrown her arms around him. He hugged her back, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo, feeling her shoulders shake with happy laughter. "That was amazing, Dad," she whispered against his chest. Over her head, Eli watched as phones appeared everywhere, recording and sharing. Principal Whitcomb was already working the crowd, clearly pleased with the unexpected publicity. DC Cole was gesturing animatedly to his agent. But none of that mattered as much as the weight of his daughter in his arms, the pride in her voice, and the feeling that maybe, just maybe, something was about to change for both of them. The gym was still buzzing with excitement as Eli tried to slip back into his routine. His heart raced from the dunk, but his hands found comfort in the familiar wooden handle of his mop. Scattered pieces of popcorn and empty cups needed attention near the home team bench. "Bennett!" Coach Ruth Alvarez's voice carried across the court. She walked toward him with purpose, her whistle swaying with each determined step. "Don't even think about disappearing into the shadows after what you just did." Eli straightened up, automatically adjusting his gray custodial uniform. "Just trying to keep the floors safe, Coach." He gestured to a small puddle of spilled soda. Ruth crossed her arms, a knowing smile on her face. That reverse dunk wasn't just keeping the floors safe. "Where'd you learn to fly like that?" "Small college ball, nothing special." Eli shrugged, but his eyes betrayed a hint of pride. "Long time ago." "Nothing special?" Ruth's eyebrows shot up. "You just sailed over DC Cole, a pro player, in front of half the town. That takes more than just luck. Those instincts, that court awareness." She paused, studying him. "You know, My girls could use someone who understands the fundamentals like that. From a few feet away, Maya's head snapped up from her phone. She'd been showing her friends the video she'd captured of her dad's dunk, but now she hung on every word of the conversation. "Oh, I don't know about that," Eli said, shifting his weight. "I'm just the janitor. Besides, there are rules about—" "Rules?" Ruth waved her hand dismissively. "I'm not talking about anything official. Just drop by practice sometime. Give a few pointers. Share some of that basketball wisdom you've clearly been hiding under that mop cap." Maya edged closer, trying not to look too obvious as she listened. Her friends clustered behind her, whispering excitedly. "Coach, I appreciate the offer, but—" Eli glanced at his daughter, seeing the hope bright in her eyes. His voice softened. "I wouldn't want to overstep." "Overstep?" Ruth laughed. "Did you see what just happened out there? Those girls in the stands?" She pointed to a group of younger students who were still recording videos on their phones. They just saw something they needed to see, that sometimes the person holding the mop might just be the one with the most to teach. Eli ran a hand through his salt and pepper hair. "It was just one lucky dunk." "Dad," Maya finally spoke up, unable to contain herself any longer. "You should do it." Her voice carried that mixture of teenage enthusiasm and earnestness that only a daughter could manage. Ruth smiled at Maya, then turned back to Eli. "Smart girl you've got there, Bennett. Listen, no pressure, but practice is Monday and Thursday afternoons, if you happen to finish your rounds early." She left the sentence hanging. Maya's friends had gathered around now, adding their own chorus of encouragement. "Please, Mr. Bennett. That was so cool. You've got to show us how you did that." Eli looked at his mop, then at his daughter's hopeful face, then back to Coach Ruth's knowing smile. He'd spent years keeping his head down, focusing on providing a stable life for Maya. Basketball belonged to his past, or so he'd thought. "I'll think about it," he said finally. Not quite a yes, but definitely not a no. Ruth nodded, satisfied. "That's all I'm asking, though I should warn you." She gestured to where Maya was now excitedly chattering with her friends. "I think you might have some persuasive forces to deal with at home." Maya's entire face had lit up, and she was practically bouncing on her toes. Even as she tried to play it cool in front of her friends, her eyes kept darting to her father with barely contained excitement. "Better finish up here," Eli said, gripping his mop handle. But the slight smile tugging at the corner of his mouth suggested that Coach Ruth's words had found their mark. Sure, Ruth said, starting to walk away. She turned back briefly. "But Bennett, that wasn't luck out there. That was pure talent. Don't waste it just because you're comfortable with that mop." As Ruth headed back to her team, Maya rushed over to her father. "Dad, that was amazing. Everyone's talking about it. Kayla already shared the video in our group chat, and—" She caught herself, trying to rein in her enthusiasm. "I mean, if you wanted to help at practice sometimes, that would be pretty cool." Eli looked at his daughter, seeing so much of her mother in her hopeful expression. "We'll see, kiddo. We'll see." He returned to his mopping, but now there was a different energy to his movements. Each stroke was accompanied by the sound of excitement still rippling through the gym, the occasional flash of a phone camera, and the warm weight of possibility hanging in the air. Maya lingered nearby, pretending to text but really watching her father work. She knew that look on his face, the one that meant he was turning something over in his mind, considering it from all angles. It was the same look he got when helping her with her geometry homework or fixing their temperamental old car. The familiar squeak of his mop against the hardwood now seemed to carry a rhythm of potential, of change, of something new taking shape in their quiet lives. Neither father nor daughter said anything more about it, but they both felt it, the shift in the air, as palpable as the lingering echo of the crowd's cheers. The morning sun streamed through the small kitchen window of the Bennett apartment, casting warm light across the worn linoleum floor. Eli stood at the stove, expertly flipping pancakes while his phone buzzed again on the counter, the 10th time in the past hour. "Dad, you've got to see this." Maya bounced into the kitchen, still in her purple pajamas, her tablet clutched tight against her chest. Her dark curls were tied in a messy bun, and excitement radiated from her face. The videos everywhere. Eli slid 2 golden brown pancakes onto a plate. What video? Maya rolled her eyes, a smile tugging at her lips. Your dunk, obviously. Look. She propped the tablet against the sugar bowl and pressed play. The footage was shaky, but clear enough, showing Eli's borrowed sneakers squeaking against the hardwood as he caught the lob pass. His body curved through the air, sailing over DC, Cole's outstretched arms before slamming the ball through the hoop. The crowd's roar came through tinny but thunderous on the tablet speakers. 37,000 views, Maya announced proudly, stabbing a piece of pancake with her fork. And that's just on one post. There are like 5 different angles going around. Eli's phone buzzed again. He glanced at the screen, 3 missed calls from numbers he didn't recognize, and a flood of social media notifications. Guess I should have stretched first, he said with a small laugh, trying to play it cool despite the warmth spreading in his chest at his daughter's obvious pride. The local morning radio show played from the old clock radio on the counter. And if you haven't seen it yet, folks, check out the viral clip from last night's charity game at Maple Ridge High. Our own local custodian showing the pros how it's done. We're trying to get Mr. Bennett on the show. Maya turned the volume up, grinning. You're famous, Dad. Famous for doing my job poorly, Eli joked, wiping his hands on a dish towel. Pretty sure dunking wasn't in the custodial handbook. The walk to school was different that morning. Usually, they moved through town like shadows. Eli in his gray work uniform, Maya with her backpack full of advanced math books. But today, heads turned. A man loading boxes at the hardware store gave Eli a thumbs up. The barista at the corner coffee shop stepped outside just to clap. Mr. Bennett, called Mrs. Chen from her flower shop. My grandson showed me the video 3 times this morning. You were amazing. Maya beamed beside him, walking a little taller with each compliment her father received. As they approached the school, a group of students hurried over, phones ready. Can we get a picture? A freshman girl asked, eyes wide with admiration. My little sister plays basketball, and she freaked out when she saw your dunk. Eli rubbed the back of his neck, uncomfortable with the attention but not wanting to disappoint. Sure, just make it quick. I've got floors to mop. 3 selfies and numerous high fives later, Eli finally made it to the maintenance office. He had just pulled on his work gloves when Coach Ruth appeared in the doorway, her clipboard tucked under one arm. Morning, Air Bennett, she said with a grin. Survived the paparazzi gauntlet, I see. Eli chuckled, reaching for his mop. Barely. Never thought I'd need a disguise to clean toilets. Well, your timing couldn't be better. Ruth stepped inside, her expression turning serious but hopeful. That buzz you created? It's exactly what we needed. I'm organizing a new player clinic next week for girls who've never felt confident enough to try out before. She paused, watching him carefully. Having someone like you there, someone who knows what it's like to surprise people, it could make a real difference. Eli's hands tightened on the mop handle. Coach, I'm not really qualified to what? To inspire kids? To show them that labels don't define what they can do? Ruth's voice was gentle but firm. You wouldn't have to coach, just be there, help rebound, share that spirit that had you soaring over a professional player last night. The rest of the day passed in a blur of wet floors, friendly waves, and persistent phone notifications. By dinner time, Eli and Maya sat at their small kitchen table, sharing a pot of mac and cheese, their traditional Wednesday meal. Maya pushed her noodles around, trying to sound casual. So, are you going to help at the clinic? Eli looked at his daughter, seeing the hope in her eyes that she was trying so hard to hide. He thought about all the times she'd watched the girls' team practice, never quite believing she belonged there. Well, he said slowly, Coach Ruth did say they need someone to rebound balls. Maya's fork clattered against her plate as she launched herself around the table, wrapping her arms tight around her father's neck. The force of her hug nearly knocked them both over, but Eli didn't mind. He held her close, feeling her happiness radiate through him like sunshine. The afternoon sun slanted through the high windows of Maple Ridge's gymnasium, casting long shadows across the polished hardwood floor. Eli Bennett stood at half court, his work boots traded for borrowed basketball shoes, watching as Coach Ruth Alvarez gathered the girls' team around her. "Ladies," Coach Ruth's voice carried clear and strong, "Mr. Bennett's going to help us with some fundamentals today." She nodded toward Eli with a warm smile. "He might be famous now, but he's here to work." A few girls giggled, and Eli felt his cheeks warm. The viral video of his dunk had racked up hundreds of thousands of views overnight. He cleared his throat and focused on the task at hand. "Let's start with something simple," he said, his voice quieter than Coach Ruth's but steady. "Defensive slides. The key is staying low and balanced." He demonstrated, knees bent, arms out, moving smoothly side to side. His borrowed shoes squeaked against the floor, a sound that had always felt like home to him. "Perfect form," Coach Ruth commented. "Line up, everyone. Watch his feet." The team formed 3 lines. In the middle line, Kayla Hart, the team captain, stood with her arms crossed. Eli had seen her play. She was quick, talented, but there was a guardedness in her expression that reminded him of himself at that age. "Quick feet, light feet," Eli called out as the girls began to mirror his movements. "Like you're dancing on hot coals." Maya stood in the back line, looking smaller than usual in her borrowed practice jersey. She caught his eye and gave a tiny wave. Eli smiled back, then turned his attention to the whole group. "Good, good," he encouraged. "Now add a crossover step when you change direction." He demonstrated again, his movements fluid despite years away from regular play. The girls followed along, some more gracefully than others. A freshman near the front stumbled slightly, and Eli moved closer. "Here's a trick," he said gently. "Focus on a spot on the wall ahead of you, not on your feet. Your body knows what to do." The girl tried again, her movement smoother this time. "That helps," she said, beaming. Kayla watched this exchange, her expression softening slightly. When it was her turn, she executed the drill perfectly, adding a quick burst of speed that showed why she was team captain. "Nice explosion on that change of direction," Eli noted. Kayla nodded, the ghost of a smile crossing her face. They ran through the drill several more times, Eli offering quiet corrections and encouragement. Coach Ruth stood back, arms crossed, nodding in approval. During a water break, Maya drifted toward one of the side hoops. Eli watched as she picked up a basketball, bounced it twice, then looked at the basket with uncertainty. She had good form. He'd taught her the basics in their driveway, but in the echo of the big gym, surrounded by the team, she seemed to shrink into herself. "Remember," he called out softly, just loud enough for her to hear, "elbow under the ball, follow through." Maya glanced around, then quickly put up a shot. It bounced off the rim, and she stepped back, shoulders hunching slightly. Before Eli could move to help, Kayla jogged over, scooped up the ball, and passed it back to Maya. "Try again," she said. "But this time, don't think about who's watching." Maya took a deep breath and squared up to the basket. This time, the ball arced cleanly through the net. "There you go," Kayla said, giving Maya a high five. As practice wound down, Coach Ruth had them running full-court layup drills. The squeak of shoes and the rhythm of bouncing balls filled the gym. One of the younger players, the same freshman from earlier, lost her footing on a fast break and stumbled. Eli, who had been standing near the baseline, stepped forward instinctively, helping her up. "You okay?" The girl nodded, embarrassed. "Just clumsy." "Nah," Eli said, brushing off her knee. "You were just running too fast for your feet. Happens to everyone. Next time, take it at your speed, not someone else's." After Coach Ruth dismissed the team, Kayla lingered behind, gathering loose balls. Eli had already grabbed his mop from the supply closet, starting his regular end-of-day routine. "Mr. Bennett?" Kayla's voice echoed in the nearly empty gym. Eli looked up from his mopping. "Yes? Thanks for helping Sarah earlier," the freshman who fell. Kayla dribbled a ball absently. She was really nervous about coming to practice. Said she wasn't sure she belonged here. Everyone belongs here, Eli said simply. Kayla nodded, a look of understanding passing between them. Yeah, she said. They do. Principal Aaron Whitcomb's office felt smaller than usual, with its wood-paneled walls and tall bookcases looming over the 3 adults seated around his desk. The late afternoon light filtered through Venetian blinds, casting striped shadows across the scattered papers and coffee cups. Eli Bennett sat stiffly in one of the visitor chairs, his work uniform still carrying the faint scent of cleaning supplies. Coach Ruth Alvarez occupied the chair beside him, her usual confident posture now tense with concern. Principal Whitcomb leaned forward in his leather chair, fingers steepled under his chin. First, let me say how impressed I've been, Whitcomb began, his tone measured and professional. The response to your involvement has been remarkable, Mr. Bennett. The video's gone viral, local businesses are calling, and I hear nothing but good things about your work with the girls. Eli nodded politely, hands clasped in his lap. Thank you, sir. The girls are great kids. They really respond to him, Coach Ruth added, her voice carrying the warmth of genuine appreciation. Even some who've never shown interest in basketball before are asking about tryouts. Whitcomb smiled, but there was hesitation in his eyes. He reached for a thick policy manual on his desk. That's what makes this conversation difficult. You see, our district has very specific guidelines about staff roles and responsibilities. The room grew quiet except for the soft whir of the heating vent above. Eli felt his stomach tighten. The issue, Whitcomb continued, flipping through tabbed pages, is that our agreement with the custodial union explicitly prohibits members from taking on coaching or teaching duties. It's a liability concern primarily. Coach Ruth straightened in her chair. Aaron, surely we can work something out. The impact he's having, I understand. Whitcomb held up a hand. But policies exist for a reason. If something were to happen, the insurance implications alone could be devastating for the district. Eli cleared his throat softly. I don't need any payment or official title, sir. I just want to help where I can. That's actually the best we can do right now, Whitcomb replied, closing the manual. You can continue to be present at practices, give informal pointers, but strictly as a volunteer, completely separate from your custodial duties. Coach Ruth's eyes narrowed. So he can do the exact same work, but we just pretend it's not really coaching. That doesn't seem right. Ruth, Whitcomb sighed. You know how these things work. We have to protect the school legally. Maybe down the road, we can look at adjusting some policies, but for now, this is our reality. Eli nodded slowly, understanding the principal's position, even if it stung. I appreciate you being straight with us. As long as I can still help the girls somehow, I'm willing to work within those limits. That's very gracious of you, Whitcomb said, genuine relief in his voice. And who knows? If things continue going well, maybe we can revisit this conversation in the future. Coach Ruth stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. We'll make it work for now. But this isn't over, Aaron. These kids deserve better than technicalities. They filed out of the office into the empty hallway, their footsteps echoing off the rows of lockers. Coach Ruth touched Eli's arm gently. I'm sorry, Eli. This isn't fair to you. It's okay, Coach. He managed a small smile. The girls are what matter. We'll figure it out. The walk home felt longer than usual. The November wind cutting through Eli's jacket. His breath came out in visible puffs as he turned onto his street, the sound of a basketball's rhythmic bounce reaching his ears before he saw its source. There was Maya, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, practicing layups against the brick wall of their apartment building. She had cleared away enough snow to make a small court, using chalk to draw lines on the pavement. Her form was improving, knees bent, elbow tucked, following through with her shooting hand. The ball bounced off the wall, and Maya caught it smoothly, determination evident in every movement. She hadn't noticed him yet, too focused on her practice. The sight warmed Eli's heart despite the cold, reminding him exactly why he'd keep showing up, title or no title. She dribbled twice, drove left, and released another layup. The ball hit the chalk-drawn target on the wall and bounced back perfectly. Maya was learning, growing stronger, finding her confidence. And that, Eli realized, was worth more than any official coaching position. She caught the rebound and finally spotted him standing there. "Dad, watch this one," she called out, her voice bright with excitement as she set up for another attempt. The morning sun streamed through the small kitchen window of Eli and Maya's apartment, casting a warm glow on their modest Saturday breakfast. Maya sat cross-legged at their scratched wooden table, happily munching on whole wheat toast with peanut butter, while Eli stood at the stove flipping the last of the pancakes. "These smell amazing, Dad," Maya said, reaching for the syrup bottle. Her dark curls were still messy from sleep, and she wore her favorite oversized basketball practice jersey over pajama pants. "Secret ingredient," Eli winked, sliding a fresh pancake onto her plate. "Cinnamon and—" The doorbell's sharp ring cut through their peaceful morning routine. Maya froze mid-bite, exchanging a puzzled look with her father. They rarely got visitors, especially this early on weekends. Eli wiped his hands on a dish towel and headed for the door. Through the peephole, he saw the perfectly coiffed silver hair of Lorraine Harding and the tall figure of her husband Charles standing in the hallway. "Maya's grandparents," he said softly, straightening his worn t-shirt before opening the door. Lorraine swept in first, her designer handbag swinging from her arm. "Good morning, Eli," she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "We were in the neighborhood and thought we'd stop by." She glanced around the apartment, taking in the basketball posters on the walls and the stack of library books on the coffee table. Charles followed, nodding politely. "Morning, Bennett." His expensive wool coat seemed out of place in the modest living room. "Grandma? Grandpa?" Maya called from the kitchen, surprise evident in her voice. "There's our girl." Lorraine moved swiftly to embrace her granddaughter while Charles hung back, hands in his pockets. Eli gestured toward the kitchen. "We were just having breakfast. Would you like some coffee? Pancakes?" "Oh, no thank you," Lorraine declined, smoothing her silk blouse. "We've already eaten at the club." She perched carefully on one of the kitchen chairs while Charles remained standing. An awkward silence settled over the room until Charles cleared his throat. "We, saw that video of your basketball stunt," he said. "Quite impressive." "The dunk thing?" Eli smiled modestly. "Just got lucky with good timing. It's all over social media," Lorraine added, her tone careful. "Everyone at the country club is talking about it." She reached into her bag and pulled out a glossy brochure. "Which actually brings us to why we're here." Maya's fork clinked against her plate as she set it down, her shoulders tensing slightly. "We've been thinking about Maya's future opportunities," Lorraine continued, sliding the brochure across the table. "Westbrook Academy has an excellent college preparatory program. Their STEM department is nationally ranked." Eli picked up the brochure, noting the pristine brick buildings and uniformed students on the cover. "That's very thoughtful, but Maya's doing well at Maple Ridge. We'd cover all expenses, of course," Charles interjected. "Tuition, books, uniforms, everything." Maya's voice was small but clear. "But what about basketball?" Lorraine's smile tightened. "Darling, Westbrook focuses on academics. They believe sports can be distracting." "Maya's maintaining straight A's while playing basketball," Eli said quietly, his hand resting protectively on his daughter's shoulder. "For now," Lorraine's voice took on an edge. "But high school is different. The competition for college admissions is fierce. She needs every advantage." Charles stepped forward, his expression serious. "Bennett, we respect what you're trying to do, but you have to think about Maya's future. Your position at the school is, well, my position." Eli's voice remained calm, but his jaw tightened. "A custodian's salary can only stretch so far," Lorraine said bluntly. "And if you won't consider what's best for Maya, we might need to explore other options." The threat hung in the air like a storm cloud. Maya's eyes widened as she looked between her father and grandparents. "Are you talking about custody?" Eli asked softly, his hand still steady on Maya's shoulder. "We hope it won't come to that," Charles said quickly, but Lorraine's silence spoke volumes. Eli straightened to his full height, his voice firm but respectful. "I appreciate your concern for Maya's future, but she's happy here. She's thriving. And while I may not have country club memberships or private school connections, I can provide what she needs most: stability, love, and support for her dreams. Dreams don't pay college tuition, Lorraine snapped, then immediately composed herself. We're only thinking of what Caroline would have wanted for her daughter. Maya flinched at the mention of her mother's name. Eli's expression softened as he looked at his daughter, then back at the Hardings. Caroline trusted me to raise our daughter, he said quietly, and I'm doing my best to honor that trust every day. The silence that followed was heavy. Finally, Charles touched his wife's arm. Perhaps we should go, Lorraine. Lorraine stood, smoothing her skirt. Think about our offer, Eli. Maya deserves every opportunity. They showed themselves out, leaving the brochure behind on the table. The click of the door closing echoed through the apartment. Maya sat motionless, staring at her half-eaten breakfast. Eli pulled out the chair next to her and sat down, waiting. They think you're not good enough, she whispered finally, her voice thick with hurt. But they're wrong. Eli wrapped an arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. Hey, look at me. He waited until she met his eyes. We're a team, Maya. That's not going to change. The late afternoon sun slanted through the high windows of Maple Ridge High's gymnasium, casting long shadows across the polished floor. Eli Bennett moved methodically around the court, placing orange cones in a careful pattern. The squeak of his work boots echoed in the empty space as he checked each cone's position one final time. Maya sat on the bottom bleacher, already changed into her practice clothes, tying her basketball shoes with careful precision. Her dark curls were pulled back in a neat ponytail, and she kept glancing at the gym entrance. She'll be here, Eli assured her, recognizing his daughter's nervous habit. As if on cue, Kayla Hart pushed through the double doors, her gym bag slung over one shoulder. The team captain moved with natural athletic grace, though her expression carried its usual hint of caution. Mr. Bennett, she nodded, dropping her bag. Maya told me you were running some drills. Just a little rebounding practice, Eli said, bouncing a basketball experimentally. Nothing fancy. Maya stood up, trying to hide her excitement. Dad's the best at teaching fundamentals. First rule of rebounding, Eli began, his voice taking on a lighter tone, is accepting that every shot might miss. He demonstrated with an intentionally terrible shot that clanged off the rim. Even mine. That got a small smile from Kayla. She caught the rebound smoothly and passed it back. The second rule, Eli continued, setting up between the cones, is position. Maya, come try to box me out. Maya jogged over, positioning herself in front of her father. Her stance was hesitant, her elbows tucked too close to her body. You're making yourself small, Eli noted gently. Take up space. You have every right to be here. He adjusted her arms slightly. Feel the difference? Maya nodded, her posture straightening with new confidence. Kayla, want to try shooting while Maya boxes me out? For the next 20 minutes, they worked through various rebounding positions. Eli kept his instructions simple, mixing in jokes about his old man moves that had both girls laughing. When Maya successfully grabbed 3 rebounds in a row, his proud smile lit up his whole face. Nice work, Maya. Kayla high-fived her younger teammate. Coach Ruth is going to love seeing that in practice. The gym doors opened again, and 2 more girls from the team peeked in curiously. Sophie Chen and Jasmine Williams stood uncertainly in the doorway. We saw the lights on, Sophie explained. Mind if we join? More players means more rebounds. Eli welcomed them with a wave. Come on in. Soon the gym echoed with the sound of bouncing balls and sneakers squeaking on hardwood. Eli moved between the girls, offering quiet encouragement and small adjustments to their form. His mop and cleaning cart stood forgotten in the corner. Remember, he called out as they ran a simple rebounding drill. Basketball is just geometry in motion. The ball's going to follow the angles. He drew an invisible line in the air. You don't have to be the tallest, just the smartest about where you position yourself. Kayla, watching Maya successfully box out Sophie, nodded thoughtfully. That makes sense. I never thought about it that way before. More girls trickled in as word spread, members of the junior varsity squad, a few who'd never played before but were curious. Eli adjusted the drills to accommodate the growing group, his natural teaching style putting everyone at ease. "Looking good, Teresa," he encouraged a freshman who'd just grabbed her first rebound. "See how your feet were set that time?" "That's exactly right." The light outside the windows had faded to purple dusk when Eli finally called time. The girls gathered their water bottles and bags, chattering excitedly about what they'd learned. "Same time tomorrow?" Sophie asked hopefully. Eli glanced at the cleaning cart, calculating his schedule. "I'll be here," he promised. As the others filed out, Kayla lingered, helping Maya collect the scattered basketballs. She bounced one thoughtfully, then looked at Eli with unusual directness. "You know," she said, "you're more coach than janitor to us." The Friday afternoon sun warmed the brick walls of Maple Ridge High's gymnasium. Inside, the girls' basketball team gathered near the home bench, chattering excitedly as they arranged themselves for a photo. Coach Ruth Alvarez stood to the side, clipboard in hand, directing traffic with her usual mix of authority and warmth. "Tallest in back, shortest up front," she called out, gesturing with her free hand. "Kayla, center position. Maya, scoot over just a bit." Eli worked quietly at the far end of the court, running his mop in long, smooth strokes. He glanced up occasionally, watching the organized chaos with a small smile. "Mr. Bennett." Coach Ruth's voice carried across the hardwood. "Put that mop down and get over here." Eli paused, leaning on his mop handle. "Oh, I'm good over here, Coach. Just keeping the floor safe." "This isn't a request," Ruth said, her eyes twinkling. "The Chronicle wants a team photo, and you're part of the team now, even if it's unofficial." The girls joined in, calling his name until Eli finally relented. He propped his mop against the wall and walked over, wiping his hands on his gray work uniform. "Where do you want me, Coach?" "Right here," Ruth said, positioning him next to her on the end. "You've earned your spot." The photographer from the local paper, a friendly woman named Sarah Chen, adjusted her camera. "Perfect setup," she said. "Now, everyone say, champions." After the photo, Sarah pulled out a small notebook. "Mr. Bennett, do you have a few minutes? Our readers would love to hear about your journey from that viral dunk to mentoring these girls." Eli shifted uncomfortably. "Not much of a story, really. I'm just helping out where I can." "That's exactly the kind of story people need to hear," Sarah pressed gently. "Mind if we chat while the team practices?" They sat on the bottom bleacher as Ruth ran drills on the court. Eli spoke softly about seeing potential in every player, about teaching fundamentals and confidence together. He watched Maya sink a perfect jump shot and couldn't hide his proud smile. "It's about more than basketball," he explained, his voice warm. "These girls are learning they can overcome any obstacle if they believe in themselves and support each other." Sarah's pencil moved quickly across her notepad. "And you're proving that job titles don't define what someone can contribute." "I'm just grateful Coach Ruth lets me help out," Eli said. "These girls make it easy. They work hard and look out for each other." The next morning, the Chronicles sports section featured the team photo prominently. Eli stood tall in his work uniform beside Coach Ruth, both of them beaming with pride at their players. The article, titled, "More Than a Viral Moment, Local Custodian Helps Shape Young Athletes' Future," painted a touching portrait of dedication and community spirit. By Monday afternoon, Principal Whitcomb called Eli into his office. The newspaper lay open on his desk. "Good press, Bennett," Whitcomb said, adjusting his tie. "Mike Thompson from Thompson's Sporting Goods called this morning. They want to offer the girls' team a small sponsorship, new practice jerseys, some equipment, provided you continue your involvement." "That's generous of them," Eli said carefully. "It is." Whitcomb leaned forward. "The school board appreciates positive attention, but we need to maintain appropriate boundaries. You understand?" "Yes, sir. Stay within policy limits." "Exactly." Whitcomb stood, extending his hand. "Keep up the good work, Bennett. Just remember, you're a facility host volunteering during open gym hours. Nothing more official than that." That evening, Eli sat at their small kitchen table, reading the article again. Maya perched on the counter nearby, finishing her homework while a pot of mac and cheese bubbled on the stove. "Listen to this part, Dad," she said, holding up her phone. "Mr. Bennett's presence has transformed more than just basketball skills. He's showing these young athletes that mentorship can come from unexpected places and that every person has valuable wisdom to share." Eli stirred the pasta, trying to hide his discomfort with the attention. Maya grinned. "You're famous, Dad." "Famous might be stretching it a bit," he said, managing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He glanced at the article again, worry creasing his forehead as he considered Whitcomb's warnings and all the delicate lines he had to walk. Maya hopped down to set the table, humming the school fight song under her breath. The newspaper rustled softly as Eli folded it closed, reminding himself to focus on what mattered most, helping these girls believe in themselves, no matter what title he held or didn't hold. The middle. The Saturday morning sun struggled to pierce through heavy winter clouds as Eli pushed open the gym doors. The empty court gleamed under fluorescent lights, waiting for the day ahead. He checked his watch, 7:15 a.m. The youth clinic wouldn't start until 9, but he liked having time to prepare everything just right. Eli wheeled out the equipment cart, methodically arranging basketballs in neat rows. The familiar smell of polish and leather filled his nose as he counted them. 28, enough for everyone registered. He set up orange cones in precise patterns for drills, checked the net tensions, and made sure the water fountains were working properly. Coach Ruth had asked him to help with setup since the clinic would bring dozens of kids from surrounding towns. The real draw, of course, was D.C. Cole, coming back to his hometown to run drills and sign autographs. Eli smiled, remembering how the national champion had taken that viral dunk in stride. At 8:30, voices echoed from the hallway. D.C. Cole strode in wearing designer warm-ups, his signature shoes gleaming. A small entourage of handlers and photographers followed, but D.C. walked straight to where Eli was adjusting a ball rack. "Mr. Bennett," D.C. called out, grinning. "Man, I better watch my head if you're going to be out here jumping today." Eli chuckled, extending his hand. "Don't worry, I left my cape at home this time." D.C. shook it firmly. "That dunk, though, still gets me. My agent says the clip hit 2 million views yesterday." "Try not to remind me," Eli said, rubbing his neck. "I'm just here to help set up and maybe rebound some shots." "Actually." D.C. glanced at his entourage, then back to Eli. "Mind if we talk for a minute? Privately?" They walked to the far corner of the gym, away from the growing activity. D.C. leaned against the wall, his usual media-ready smile softening into something more genuine. "Look, I wanted to tell you something," he said. "That night of the dunk, I played it cool, but man, you got me good. Not just the move itself, but the guts to even try it." Eli shook his head. "It was just a lucky moment." "Nah, it was more than that." D.C. straightened up. "I've been watching what you're doing with these girls, especially that captain, Kayla, right? And your daughter Maya. The way you're building their confidence, teaching them the game right. They're good kids," Eli said. "They just need someone to believe in them." D.C. nodded slowly. "That's exactly what I'm talking about. See, my shoe sponsor's been looking to fund some community programs. Girls basketball especially. It's growing fast, but a lot of schools still don't give it the resources it needs." Eli's attention sharpened as D.C. continued. "They've got this grant program," D.C. said. "Pretty substantial funding for equipment, uniforms, maybe even facility upgrades. But," he paused, "they need someone official running things. Can't just be a volunteer situation." The implication hung in the air. Eli thought about Principal Whitcomb's warnings about policy limits, about staying in his lane. "I appreciate what you're saying," Eli began carefully. "But there are some complications with my position here." "I know about the policy stuff," D.C. cut in. "But policies can change when the right opportunity comes along. Think about what this could mean for those girls, for Maya." Before Eli could respond, the gym doors burst open as excited kids started streaming in. D.C.'s handlers appeared, clipboard wielding and urgent. "Time to work," D.C. said with a wink. He raised his voice to its public persona level. Let's see what these young ballers can do. The clinic moved at a whirlwind pace. DC commanded the court with natural charisma, running drills and sharing stories. Eli stayed busy retrieving loose balls and helping younger kids with proper form. He watched Maya nail a three-pointer and saw DC give her an enthusiastic high five. Near the end, as parents snapped photos and kids lined up for autographs, DC pulled Eli aside one more time. "Just think about it," he said quietly. "I'll have my people reach out to the school next week. Sometimes the universe opens a door. Might be worth seeing what's on the other side." The clinic wrapped up by early afternoon. Eli finished storing equipment while the last stragglers filed out. He locked up the gym and stepped into the winter air, his breath forming clouds in the cold. The sky had cleared during the morning, leaving the world crisp and bright. As he walked home, his footsteps crunched on patches of old snow. DC's words echoed in his mind. A real program, with real funding. The chance to help these girls properly, not just in stolen moments between mopping floors, but it would mean challenging the system, pushing against boundaries that felt safer left alone. The winter sun cast long shadows across his path. Eli pulled his jacket tighter, feeling the weight of possibility in every step. The fluorescent lights hummed softly in the gym lobby as Eli and the girls' basketball team sat cross-legged in a circle, surrounded by the aroma of pepperoni pizza. Steam rose from the open boxes while the girls chatted and laughed, their practice jerseys still damp with sweat. Maya sat next to her father, quietly nibbling on her slice, while Kayla told animated stories about their last game. Coach Ruth leaned against the wall, watching her team with pride. These informal post-practice dinners had become a weekly tradition, bringing them closer together. She loved seeing how the girls opened up around Eli, their usual teenage barriers melting away as they shared stories and jokes. "You know what we need?" Coach Ruth said suddenly, pushing off from the wall. "A special play, something unexpected that could catch teams off guard in tight situations. Like those fancy plays they do in the pros?" Jasmine, one of the forwards, asked through a mouthful of cheese. "Exactly," Ruth nodded. "But something uniquely ours. Something no one would see coming." Eli wiped his hands on a napkin, his eyes lighting up with an idea. He reached for an empty pizza box and flipped it over to its clean brown side. "Anyone got a pen?" Sarah, the team manager, pulled one from her backpack. Eli accepted it with a grateful smile and began sketching on the cardboard. The girls huddled closer, their curiosity piqued. "So, here's what I'm thinking," Eli said, drawing X's and O's on the makeshift diagram. "We set up like it's a standard box formation, but then..." His pen moved quickly, drawing arrows and adding numbers. Coach Ruth moved in for a better look, her eyebrows rising with interest. "That's different," she said, a smile playing at her lips. "It's like a double screen," Kayla observed, pointing to part of the diagram. "But with a twist?" "More like a triple screen," Eli explained, adding more details. "The key is misdirection. Everyone expects the ball to go to our shooter in the corner, but instead, he drew a final arrow with a flourish." Maya's eyes widened. "The back door cut. That's sneaky, Dad." The girls crowded around the pizza box, their dinner temporarily forgotten. Eli walked them through each step, using his pen to demonstrate the timing and positioning. Some of the girls mimicked the movements with their hands, trying to visualize their roles. "Want to try it?" Coach Ruth asked, jingling her keys. A chorus of excited agreements filled the lobby. The girls scrambled to their feet, brushing pizza crumbs from their practice uniforms. They filed back into the gym, the squeak of their shoes echoing off the walls. Eli positioned each player, fine-tuning their starting spots. "Remember," he said, "the timing has to be perfect. Count to 3 after the first screen, then make your move." They ran through the play slowly at first, working out the spacing. There were a few collisions and plenty of giggles as they figured out their timing. Coach Ruth watched from the sideline, calling out suggestions and encouragement. "Let's try it at game speed," she said after they'd walked through it several times. Kayla took the ball out of bounds, surveying her teammates as they set up. The defense, made up of the second string, shifted nervously, trying to anticipate what was coming. "Ready?" Kayla called out. 3, 2, 1. The play unfolded like a choreographed dance. Maya set the first screen, then slipped away as Sarah cut through. The defense shifted, following the movement. Jasmine set the second screen right on cue, and suddenly Leslie was free, streaking toward the basket. Kayla's pass threaded through the defense, hitting Leslie in stride. She laid the ball in smoothly as her teammates cheered. "That was beautiful," Coach Ruth clapped. "Run it again." They practiced the play for another 20 minutes, making small adjustments each time. The defense never quite figured out how to stop it, even when they knew it was coming. The girls' excitement grew with each successful execution. "We need a name for it," Sarah suggested as they gathered their water bottles. "How about the pizza play?" Maya offered, making everyone laugh. "Perfect," Coach Ruth agreed. "It'll be our secret weapon." As they cleaned up the gym lobby, disposing of the pizza boxes and napkins, there was a new energy among the team. They'd created something together, something that was uniquely theirs. Even the girls who usually sat quietly during team meetings were chattering excitedly about their roles in the play. Eli gathered up the pizza box with his diagram, carefully folding it to preserve the drawing. The simple brown cardboard had become something special, a symbol of their teamwork and creativity. "Keep that safe," Coach Ruth told him with a wink. "That's championship material right there." The girls filed out into the cool evening air, still talking about the play. Maya waited by the door while Eli made sure all the lights were off and the doors were secure, the pizza box tucked carefully under his arm. "That was really cool, Dad," Maya said as they walked home under the streetlights. "The way you just came up with that." Eli glanced down at the pizza box, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the evening's activity. "Sometimes the best ideas come when you're just having fun," he said. They could see their breath in the cold air as they walked, the pizza box held carefully between them like a precious trophy. The diagram might have been drawn on a humble piece of cardboard, but tonight it represented something more. A moment when a simple dinner had turned into magic, when a janitor sketch had brought a team together, when basketball had become more than just a game. The old school bus rumbled down the highway, carrying the Maple Ridge High girls basketball team toward the holiday tournament. Snow-covered fields stretched out on either side, the morning sun making the landscape sparkle. Inside, excited chatter and laughter filled the warm air. Eli sat near the front, next to Coach Ruth, reviewing game notes scribbled on a well-worn notepad. He wore his usual work clothes. He'd cleaned the gym before dawn, but had added a Maple Ridge basketball sweater Maya had given him for his birthday. "Nervous?" Coach Ruth asked quietly. "They're ready," Eli replied, watching the girls through the rearview mirror. Maya sat with Kayla, both of them sharing earbuds and watching game footage on a tablet. The bus pulled into the parking lot of Valley View High School, where 6 teams would compete in the holiday tournament. Parents' cars were already lined up, and Christmas decorations adorned the entrance. In the locker room, Eli helped Coach Ruth set up the whiteboard while the girls changed into their uniforms. When they gathered for the pre-game talk, he could see the nervous energy in their faces. "Remember what we practiced," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "Play your game, trust each other, and have fun. That's all that matters today." Their first opponent was a team they'd never faced before. The girls started slowly, missing their first few shots as they adjusted to the unfamiliar court. But then Kayla hit a three-pointer, and the tension broke. They settled into their rhythm, running their plays with growing confidence. Maya came off the bench in the second quarter, her hands shaking slightly as she checked in at the scorer's table. Eli gave her a subtle thumbs up. On her first possession, she grabbed an offensive rebound and put it back up, her first points in a real game. The Maple Ridge parents erupted in cheers, none louder than Eli. They won that game by 12 points, and the second game was even better. The pizza box play worked perfectly twice, leaving the opposing coach scratching his head in confusion. The girls advanced to the championship game against the tournament favorites. Between games, they rested in a classroom turned temporary team room. Eli passed out orange slices and energy bars, while Coach Ruth drew up adjustments on the board. Maya sat next to her father as she retaped her ankle. "You're doing great out there," he said softly. "Thanks, Dad." She smiled, then hesitated. "I wish Mom could see this." Eli squeezed her shoulder. "She'd be so proud of you." The championship game was intense from the start. The other team was taller and more experienced, but the Maple Ridge girls fought for every loose ball and rebound. Kayla played like a veteran, directing traffic and hitting crucial shots. With 10 seconds left, they were down by 1 point. Coach Ruth called timeout, and the girls huddled around the bench, breathing hard. "Pizza play?" Kayla suggested, wiping sweat from her forehead. Coach Ruth looked at Eli, who nodded. They won't expect it in this situation. The girls took their positions on the court. Maya set the first screen, then cut hard toward the basket. The defense shifted exactly as they'd practiced against. Kayla's pass was perfect, and Maya laid the ball in just before the buzzer. The gym exploded. Parents and fans rushed the court as the girls jumped and hugged each other. Maya found herself lifted onto her teammates' shoulders, still hardly believing what had happened. Eli stood back, watching the celebration with tears in his eyes. Coach Ruth grabbed him in a fierce hug. "That play," she laughed. "That beautiful pizza box play." They loaded the trophy onto the bus, along with 3 boxes of pizza, a fitting celebration snack. The ride home was filled with singing and laughter, the girls reliving every moment of their victory. At the church hall, where the community had gathered for a celebration potluck, Reverend Lila led the choir in "When the Saints Go Marching In" as the team entered. Tables groaned under casseroles, fried chicken, and homemade desserts. Someone had hung a banner that read, "Congratulations, Lady Warriors." The girls sat together at one long table, still in their uniforms, passing dishes and telling stories. Parents and church members stopped by to congratulate them, many patting Eli on the back as they passed. Maya watched her father from across the room as he helped Mrs. Johnson, the church secretary, arrange more chairs. He moved with the same quiet purpose he showed whether mopping floors or coaching basketball. In the warm light of the church hall, surrounded by their community's love and pride, she felt a happiness so complete it almost hurt. The choir switched to Amazing Grace, and conversations quieted as the familiar melody filled the room. Eli found his way back to Maya's side, and she leaned against him as they listened to the music. The trophy sat in the center of the dessert table, catching the light from the Christmas decorations, while outside, snow began to fall softly in the darkness. The Monday morning sun streamed through the small windows of Maple Ridge High's staff break room, casting long shadows across the worn linoleum floor. Eli Bennett stood at the coffee maker, pouring his usual black coffee into a chipped mug that read, "World's Okayest Janitor, a gift from Maya last Christmas." Jerry Thompson, one of the maintenance workers, sat hunched over his phone at the break table, his half-eaten sandwich forgotten. His eyes were glued to the screen, thumb scrolling rhythmically. "Morning, Jerry," Eli said, adding a splash of cold water to cool his coffee. Jerry's head snapped up, and something in his expression made Eli pause. Morning, Len," Jerry said, using Eli's nickname, but avoiding eye contact. He quickly turned his phone face down on the table. Sarah from the cafeteria burst through the door, her own phone in hand. "Eli, have you seen what's going around?" Her voice carried genuine concern. "What's going around?" Eli asked, his stomach tightening. The past few weeks had been almost too good to be true. The team winning, Maya coming out of her shell, the community rallying around them. Sarah hesitated, then held out her phone. "Someone posted this early this morning. Well, you should see it." Eli set down his coffee and took the phone. The video was grainy, clearly from years ago, shot at night outside what he immediately recognized as his old college gymnasium. His heart sank as he watched a younger version of himself, wearing his former team's warm-up jacket, confronting another man. The clip jumped and skipped, showing only the final moment when Eli's fist connected with the other man's jaw. Below the video, anonymous comments filled the screen. "This is who's mentoring our girls. Once violent, always violent. Should a man with anger issues be around kids?" Jerry cleared his throat. It's getting shared pretty fast, Len. Principal Whitcomb's already gotten calls. Eli handed the phone back to Sarah, his hand steady despite the trembling he felt inside. That clip doesn't show what really happened, he said quietly. What did happen? Sarah asked gently. Before Eli could answer, his own phone buzzed. It was an email from Sportstown, the local store that had offered the team sponsorship. Due to recent concerns, postponing our partnership discussion. Need to review. The break room door opened again. This time it was Coach Ruth, her face drawn with worry. Eli, we need to talk. They walked together down the empty hallway, their footsteps echoing against the lockers. Ruth's usual energetic stride was measured, careful. The school board called an emergency meeting, she said, and 3 other potential sponsors have pulled back their offers. Eli nodded, his jaw tight. They didn't see Marcus Jenkins being called names that night. They didn't see him getting surrounded by those guys from the other team. The clip doesn't show any of that. I believe you, Ruth said firmly. But we need to get ahead of this. Can you get Marcus to speak up? He's a pastor in Minnesota now. I haven't talked to him in years. Eli's knee twinged as they walked, an old injury acting up with the changing weather. I left school right after that to take care of Maya and Sarah. The college wanted it all to go away quietly, so they did. Throughout the day, Eli felt the stares and whispers follow him through the halls. He focused on his work, scrubbing floors, changing lights, fixing locks. The simple, honest labor that had helped him rebuild his life. During his lunch break, he found more messages on his phone. The Maple Ridge Community Facebook page was filled with debates about his character. Some defended him, but others called for his removal from any involvement with the team. Maya texted him during 7th period. Dad, people are saying stuff. I told them they're wrong about you. His reply was simple. Head high, baby girl. Truth matters more than talk. But by the end of the school day, the damage was spreading. Principal Whitcomb called him into the office, expression grave. The district superintendent is concerned, Eli. We may need to pause your involvement with the team until this settles. At home that evening, Eli sat in his worn recliner, his laptop open on the coffee table. The video had thousands of views now. His knee ached fiercely. He'd taken the stairs too many times today, trying to avoid people in the elevator. He stared at the screen, watching his younger self throw that punch over and over in the endlessly looping clip. His hand moved unconsciously to rub his throbbing knee, remembering not just that night, but everything that came after. Leaving school, losing Sarah to illness, raising Maya alone, building a new life, one clean floor at a time. The partial truth played out in those grainy pixels, but the whole story, the story of standing up for what's right, of protecting others, of choosing family over fame, that story remained untold. The Maple Ridge High Gym crackled with electricity. Every seat was filled, with standing room only along the walls. The scoreboard showed 30 seconds left in the regional semifinal, and the Lady Wolves trailed the Wellington Heights Warriors by 1 point. Eli Bennett watched from his spot near the bench, his heart pounding. His daughter Maya sat next to him, clipboard in hand as the team manager. The Warriors were the defending state champions, with 3 Division I commits on their roster. Kayla Hart dribbled at the top of the key, her jersey dark with sweat. Coach Ruth called out a play, and Kayla's eyes locked with Eli's for a brief moment. He gave a small nod. They both knew which play was coming. Pizza box, Kayla shouted, and the team shifted into position. The Warriors coach leaned forward, puzzled. This wasn't a formation they'd seen on film. The play they'd drawn up months ago on a greasy cardboard box was about to decide their season. Sarah Chen set a screen, and Kayla darted left. 2 defenders followed. But it was a fake. Kayla spun back right, finding a lane to the basket. The Warriors' center stepped up to block her path. Kayla didn't shoot. Instead, she dropped a no-look bounce pass to Jenny Rodriguez, who had slipped behind the defense. Jenny laid the ball off the backboard and through the net. The gym erupted. Maple Ridge led by 1 with 20 seconds left. "Defense!" Coach Ruth shouted, clapping her hands. "Lock in!" Wellington Heights pushed the ball up court quickly. Their star guard drove right, but Kayla stayed in front of her, forcing a tough shot that clanged off the rim. Sarah grabbed the rebound and held on as the final buzzer sounded. The Maple Ridge crowd poured onto the court. Parents hugged, students jumped up and down, and the team formed a celebratory pile at center court. They had just knocked off the #1 seed. "We did it," Maya squealed, throwing her arms around her father. Eli hugged her tight, his eyes misty with pride. After several minutes of celebration, Coach Ruth gathered both teams for the post-game handshake line. It was a time-honored tradition of sportsmanship, something both schools took seriously. Eli stood near the end of the line, as he usually did during games, ready to help direct traffic and maintain order. The Warriors players moved through, most of them showing admirable grace in defeat. Kayla reached out to shake hands with Monica Thompson, Wellington's senior captain. As they clasped hands, Monica's face twisted with anger and frustration. "You got lucky," Monica muttered, then added something else, words too soft for most to hear, but clear enough to Kayla. Words that had no place in any gym, in any school, in any century. Kayla jerked her hand back as if burned. "What did you just say to me?" The line stopped moving. Players from both teams turned to look. "You heard me," Monica sneered, taking a step closer. "Hey," Kayla's voice rose. "You don't get to." Eli moved instantly, his instincts kicking in. He stepped between the girls, placing a gentle but firm hand on each of their shoulders. "Let's take a breath," he said calmly. "This isn't who we are." Other players started crowding around. Coaches rushed in. Someone bumped someone else, and suddenly there was pushing and shoving from both sides. Phones appeared in the crowd, recording the chaos. "Break it up! Break it up!" Coach Ruth's voice cut through the noise. The Wellington Heights coach did the same from his side. Security guards appeared, and slowly the teams were separated. No punches had been thrown, but the damage was done. What had started as a historic victory for Maple Ridge had ended in ugly confusion. In the locker room afterward, Kayla sat alone on a bench, still in her uniform. Eli knocked softly on the doorframe. "You okay?" he asked. She looked up, her eyes red but fierce. "You heard what she said?" Eli nodded slowly. "I did. And it was wrong. Completely wrong. Then why did you stop me? Why didn't you let me?" "Because that's what she wanted," Eli said, sitting down on the bench across from her. "She wanted to take this night away from you, away from all of you." Kayla wiped her eyes with her jersey. "I'm tired of having to be the bigger person." "I know," Eli said softly, "but you're also the better player, the better leader, and you just led your team to the biggest win in school history. Don't let her take that from you." Before Kayla could respond, Maya burst into the locker room, her face pale. "Dad, you need to see this." She held up her phone. A local news station was already running clips of the post-game incident. The shaky phone footage showed only the pushing and shoving, with Eli in the middle. But then the report cut to another video, the grainy footage from Eli's college days, showing him in an altercation outside a gym. "Pattern of behavior?" the news anchor asked. "Questions arise about Maple Ridge High's controversial basketball mentor." Eli felt his stomach drop. The story they were spinning had nothing to do with what really happened, not today and not back then. But perception was becoming reality, frame by frame, click by click. "They're not showing what she said," Kayla said, staring at the phone. "They're not showing any of what really happened." Maya put her hand on her father's shoulder. "Dad?" Eli stood up slowly, his old knee injury throbbing. Outside, he could hear the crowd still buzzing, could imagine the stories already spreading through social media. But right now, 2 teenage girls were looking at him for guidance, for proof that doing the right thing still mattered. "We'll handle it," he said firmly. "Together, like we handle everything else." The locker room door opened again. Coach Ruth stood there with Principal Whitcomb and the athletic director. "Eli," Whitcomb said gravely, "we need to talk." The Monday morning hallways of Maple Ridge High echoed with the usual chatter of students, but Eli Bennett felt the stares following him as he limped toward Principal Whitcomb's office. His weekend had been a blur of phone calls, and worried glances from Maya. The handshake line incident video had spread like wildfire, and someone had cleverly edited it alongside the old college footage to paint a damning picture. Ms. Torres, Whitcomb's secretary, gave Eli a sympathetic look as she buzzed him in. Inside the office, Principal Whitcomb sat behind his desk, flanked by 2 district administrators Eli didn't recognize. The room felt colder than usual. "Please have a seat, Mr. Bennett," Whitcomb said, his tone formal and distant, nothing like the warm congratulations he'd offered after the holiday tournament. Eli lowered himself into the chair, his work uniform suddenly feeling too tight around his neck. Papers were spread across the desk, printouts of social media posts, still frames from both videos, and what looked like policy documents. "We need to discuss recent events," Whitcomb began, clearing his throat. "The district has concerns about what appears to be a pattern of aggressive behavior." One of the administrators, a woman in a charcoal suit, slid forward a folder. "We have the incident from Friday night's game, which has generated significant community discussion, and now this older footage has surfaced from your college days." "That college video doesn't show the whole story," Eli said quietly. "There was context." "Unfortunately," Whitcomb cut in, "the context isn't what's circulating online. What people are seeing is a school employee involved in 2 physical alterations, years apart." The second administrator, a man with wire-rimmed glasses, spoke up. "Given your current unofficial role with the girls' basketball program and the liability concerns already in place, the district feels it necessary to take precautionary measures." Eli's stomach tightened. He knew what was coming. "Effective immediately, you're being placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation," Whitcomb announced. "With pay, of course, but you'll need to stay off school grounds outside of any requested meetings with HR or the investigation team." The words hit Eli like a physical blow. "The girls have regionals coming up," he managed to say. "Coach Alvarez will handle the team," Whitcomb replied, not meeting his eyes. "And, I should mention, the shoe company called this morning. They're freezing the community grant discussion until this situation is resolved." Eli nodded numbly, his dreams of becoming the official skills coach crumbling. The administrators had him sign some papers, explaining the terms of his leave and the investigation process. Everything felt distant, like he was watching it happen to someone else. As he left the office, the hallways had cleared. Classes were in session. His footsteps echoed as he walked to the custodial office to collect his personal items. The small space felt like a funeral home, with his co-workers giving him awkward nods as he packed up his coffee mug and family photo. The day dragged on at home. Maya texted during her lunch break. "Dad, everyone's talking about it. This isn't fair." He responded with reassuring words he didn't quite believe himself. That evening, needing to clear his head, Eli decided to check on their apartment building's storage unit in the basement. The stairs were poorly lit, and someone had mopped earlier without putting up a warning sign. His foot hit a slick spot on the 3rd step. The world tilted. His right knee twisted as he fell, sending shooting pain up his leg. He landed hard, clutching the railing, but the damage was done. The knee already swelling, he somehow managed to drag himself back up to his apartment. 2 hours later, he sat in the emergency room as a doctor examined his knee. The diagnosis was devastating, a torn meniscus requiring surgery to repair. "Without insurance, you're looking at significant out-of-pocket costs," the doctor explained gently. "We can provide a payment plan, but..." Eli knew his basic employee insurance would cover most of it if he kept his job. But on administrative leave, with his position in jeopardy, he couldn't risk that kind of debt, not with Maya to think about. The doctor wrapped his knee, prescribed pain medication, and gave him a set of crutches. "Ice it regularly, keep it elevated, and try to stay off it as much as possible," she instructed. "We can discuss surgical options once your employment situation stabilizes." Back home, Eli sat alone in the dark living room. Maya was spending the night at a friend's house. He hadn't told her about the knee yet. An ice pack rested on the swollen joint as he stared out the window. Snow was falling softly, the flakes catching the streetlight's glow before disappearing into the darkness. His phone lay silent on the coffee table. No messages from the school, no calls from supporters, no updates about the investigation, just the quiet hum of the heating system and the occasional car passing outside. The darkness felt fitting. Everything he'd built over the past few months, the trust of the girls' team, Maya's growing confidence, the respect of the community, the chance at a new career path, all of it was slipping away like the melting snowflakes on the window glass. He shifted slightly, wincing at the pain in his knee. The ice pack had grown warm. He needed to change it. But for a moment, he just sat there, watching the snow fall, feeling the weight of uncertainty settle around him like a heavy blanket. The notice. Maya Bennett's sneakers squeaked against the worn hallway floor as she trudged up to their third-floor apartment. Basketball practice had been quiet today, too quiet without her dad there to crack jokes or offer encouragement from the sidelines. Her backpack felt heavier than usual, weighted down with the worry she'd been carrying since his suspension. The flickering fluorescent lights cast shadows in the narrow corridor. As she reached their door, something caught her eye, a crisp white envelope lying on the faded welcome mat. Her heart skipped a beat. Official-looking mail never brought good news these days. With trembling fingers, she picked up the envelope. Through the thin paper, she could make out an embossed letterhead. The return address made her stomach drop. Harrison, Associates, Attorneys at Law. Maya fumbled with her key, nearly dropping it twice before managing to unlock the door. Inside, she found her father at the kitchen table, ice pack on his knee, sorting through bills with his reading glasses perched low on his nose. He looked up and smiled, but his expression quickly changed when he saw her face. "Maya, what's wrong, sweetheart?" She held out the envelope wordlessly. Eli took it, his own hands not quite steady as he tore it open. Maya watched his eyes scan the document, saw the color drain from his face. "Dad?" Her voice came out small, like when she was little. Eli swallowed hard, setting the papers down carefully. "Your grandparents, they've filed for custody review." He tried to keep his voice even, but Maya heard the strain. "The hearing is scheduled for next Friday morning." "But that's..." Maya's eyes widened in recognition. "That's the day of the regional final." "Yes." Eli rubbed his temple. "It is." Maya grabbed the papers, reading frantically. Legal terms jumped out at her. Petition for custody evaluation. Concerns regarding financial stability. Educational opportunities. Her vision blurred as tears welled up. "They can't do this," she whispered. "They can't take me away from you." Eli pushed back his chair and opened his arms. Maya fell into them like she used to when she was small, sobbing against his shoulder. His embrace was warm and solid, the safest place she knew. "Listen to me," he said softly, stroking her hair. "Nobody is taking you anywhere. We're going to get through this together, just like we always have." But Maya could feel the slight tremor in his hands, hear the careful control in his voice that meant he was holding back his own fear. She pulled back to look at him. "Is this because of the suspension? And your knee? And the videos?" "They're worried about your future," Eli said carefully. "Your grandparents. They want what they think is best for you. But they're wrong." Maya's voice rose. "I don't want their fancy private school or their country club life. I want to stay here, with you, playing basketball, and..." Her voice cracked. Eli squeezed her shoulders gently. "Maya, honey, I need you to hear something." He waited until she met his eyes. "Whatever happens in that courtroom, whatever anyone says about me or my job or our life here, none of it changes who we are to each other. You're my daughter, and I love you more than anything in this world." Maya wiped her eyes with her sleeve. "I'm scared, Dad." "I know, baby. I am too." He gave her a small smile. "But you know what we do when we're scared, right?" Maya nodded, managing a watery smile of her own. "We pray." Together, they bowed their heads over the kitchen table, hands clasped tightly. The late evening light filtered through their small window, casting long shadows across the scattered papers and bills. Eli's voice was steady as he began to pray, asking for strength, for guidance, for protection of their little family. Maya squeezed her father's hands, adding her own silent prayers to his. The familiar words wrapped around them like a warm blanket, and for a moment, the weight of the custody notice seemed a little lighter. They stayed that way for a long time, hands joined, heads bowed, their quiet prayers filling the space between them with hope. Saturday morning, sunlight filtered through the worn curtains of the Bennett's small kitchen, casting warm patches on the scratched linoleum floor. Eli sat at their second-hand table, his injured knee propped on a folding chair, watching Maya methodically pour cereal into 2 chipped bowls. The familiar routine felt different today, heavier somehow. The custody hearing notice lay between them like an unwelcome guest, its crisp legal letterhead a stark contrast to their modest surroundings. Maya hadn't said much since finding it yesterday, but Eli could see the questions building behind her eyes as she concentrated on not spilling the milk. "Maya," Eli began softly, pushing his bowl aside. "There's something I need to tell you about that old video everyone's talking about." Maya looked up, spoon frozen halfway to her mouth. She'd been avoiding watching the grainy footage herself, but she'd heard the whispers at school. "The fight at your college?" Eli nodded, absently rubbing his knee. "It wasn't what people are saying, not even close." He took a deep breath. "I had this teammate, Marcus, freshman kid from Detroit, brilliant point guard. One night after practice, some guys from another team started hassling him in the parking lot." Maya set down her spoon, listening intently as her father's voice grew quiet but firm. "They were saying terrible things, racist things. Marcus tried to walk away, but they followed him. When one of them grabbed his jacket, I stepped in." Eli's hands curled into fists on the table, then slowly relaxed. "I didn't throw the first punch, but I made sure it was the last one." "You were protecting him," Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, but the school administration." Eli shook his head. "They only saw what they wanted to see. Called it conduct unbecoming. They gave me a choice, accept a suspension and write an apology, or lose my scholarship." Maya's eyes widened. "But that's not fair. You were helping someone." "Life isn't always fair, sweetheart." Eli reached across the table to cover her hand with his. "But sometimes it gives you better choices than the ones other people try to force on you." "What do you mean?" "Your mom was already sick then, and you were just a tiny thing." A soft smile crossed his face. "The administration wanted me to say I was wrong, to pretend I hadn't seen what I saw. But your mom taught me that standing up for what's right matters more than standing up for yourself." Maya blinked back tears. "So you chose us instead of basketball?" "Every time." Eli squeezed her hand. "I left school to take care of you both. Found work as a custodian because it let me set my own hours, be there for doctor's appointments. After your mom," his voice caught. "Well, the job stuck. It wasn't glamorous, but it kept us together." The kitchen fell quiet, except for the soft hum of their ancient refrigerator. Maya stared at their joined hands, processing everything she'd heard. Finally, she stood up, walked around the table, and wrapped her arms around her father's shoulders. "You're the bravest person I know," she whispered fiercely. Eli hugged her back, his eyes damp. "I'm just trying my best, Maya girl." She pulled back, wiping her eyes with the sleeve of her basketball warm-up jacket. Her expression had changed. There was a determination there that reminded Eli so much of her mother. "Well, I'm not letting Grandma and Grandpa take me away," she declared. "And I'm not letting the school push you out either." She straightened up, shoulders squared. "We didn't come this far to quit." Eli felt something shift in his chest. Pride, hope, and love, all mixed together. His daughter wasn't just hearing his story. She was choosing to stand with him, just as he'd once stood for what was right. "Okay then," he said, pushing himself up from the chair despite his aching knee. "Let's figure out our next play." Maya was already clearing the breakfast dishes with renewed energy. "First, we need to tell Coach Ruth the whole story. And Kayla, she'll want to help. Maybe DC. Cole knows someone who could find the real video from college." Eli watched his daughter move around their small kitchen, listing ideas and possibilities, her spirit unbroken by the challenges ahead. In that moment, He knew with absolute certainty that no matter what happened at the custody hearing, they'd face it together, just like they always had. The end. Monday afternoon cast long shadows through the high windows of Maple Ridge High's auditorium. Eli Bennett limped down the empty hallway on his crutches, responding to what he thought was a routine maintenance call about a loose stage light. The metal door creaked as he pushed it open with one crutch. Instead of the expected darkness, he found the auditorium fully lit and packed with people. Students filled the seats, teachers lined the walls, and his fellow custodial staff stood together near the front. On stage, Coach Ruth Alvarez stood at a podium, with Kayla Hart and the entire girls' basketball team behind her. "Mr. Bennett," Coach Ruth's voice carried through the speakers, warm and strong. "We have something to say to you." Eli froze in the doorway, his knee throbbing beneath his work pants. Someone had taped a large banner across the stage. "We see you, Mr. Bennett." "Come on in," Coach Ruth gestured. "We promise not to make you dunk today." A ripple of gentle laughter moved through the crowd. Two students quickly brought a comfortable chair to the front row. Eli made his way down the aisle, nodding awkwardly at familiar faces, his cheeks flushing at the attention. "For those who don't know me," Coach Ruth continued once Eli was seated, "I've been coaching here for 23 years. In all that time, I've never met anyone who embodies the spirit of Maple Ridge quite like Eli Bennett." She gestured to Kayla, who stepped forward. The team captain's usual confident swagger was tempered by emotion as she gripped the podium. "Mr. Bennett taught me that leadership isn't about who has the fanciest title," Kayla said, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. "It's about showing up every day and doing the right thing, even when nobody's watching, or when everybody's watching and still trying to tear you down." One by one, people came forward to share their stories. Mrs. Chen from the cafeteria described how Eli quietly paid for lunches when students couldn't afford them. Marcus from the night cleaning crew talked about Eli covering his shifts when Marcus's mother was sick, refusing to take payment. "He thought nobody noticed," Marcus said, smiling. "But we all did." A freshman girl spoke about being lost on her first day, how Eli not only gave her directions but walked her to class, telling jokes until her nervousness faded. A math teacher recalled finding Eli helping a student clean up a spilled science project at 7 p.m., long after his shift had ended. The stories kept coming, small kindnesses, quiet moments of dignity, a pattern of compassion that had touched hundreds of lives. Coach Ruth returned to the podium. "And now, we have an unexpected guest who'd like to say something." The back doors opened, and D.C. Cole strode in, his presence drawing gasps and whispers. The national champion made his way to the stage, his usual showman's smile replaced by something more genuine. "Mr. Bennett," D.C. said, his voice carrying clearly without the microphone. "That night you dunked over me, I was embarrassed. Not because you got me good, though you definitely did." He paused for the appreciative chuckles. "I was embarrassed because I realized I'd forgotten something important about this game. About life, really. It's not about who you are or what's on your resume. It's about heart." D.C. reached into his jacket and pulled out a USB drive. "I've got something here. The full, unedited security footage from that night at Central State College 12 years ago. I had my people track it down. Everyone's going to see exactly what happened. How you stepped in to protect that freshman from racist thugs. How you chose the high road even when the school didn't back you up." A projector hummed to life, and Crystal Martinez, the sophomore point guard, stepped up. "Before we show that, though, we have one more thing." She gestured to the team, who began distributing small mops tied with ribbon to everyone in the audience. "These represent all the times you've cleaned up our messes, literal and otherwise. All the times you've had our backs." The entire auditorium rose, holding the symbolic mops high. Coach Ruth's voice cracked as she said, "We see you, Mr. Bennett. Not just the janitor. Not just the guy who made that amazing dunk. We see the man who makes this school better every single day." Eli gripped his crutches tightly, overwhelmed by the wall of support before him. His vision blurred as the entire audience, students, teachers, custodians, athletes, stood and began to applaud. The sound rolled through the auditorium like thunder, drowning out the winter wind outside. The girls' team descended from the stage, surrounding him with gentle hugs. Through the tears he wouldn't let fall, Eli saw Maya in the front row, beaming with pride, her own cheeks wet. The applause continued, a standing ovation that seemed to lift the very roof with its sincerity. The morning sun painted golden streaks across living rooms throughout Maple Ridge, as families gathered around their TVs for the local news. The familiar jingle of Channel 7's breaking news segment filled the air. We have exclusive footage that sheds new light on the controversial incident involving Maple Ridge High's Eli Bennett during his college years, announced anchor Sarah Chen. National basketball star D.C. Cole has provided us with the complete video. The screen filled with slightly grainy footage from what appeared to be a security camera outside a college gymnasium. The timestamp showed a date from 20 years ago. In crystal clear detail, the video showed a group of young men surrounding a freshman player, shoving him and shouting racial slurs. A younger Eli Bennett appeared, stepping between them with his hands raised in a peaceful gesture. As you can see, Sarah Chen's voice continued over the footage. Mr. Bennett was clearly attempting to defuse the situation and protect his teammate. The previously circulated clip only showed the final seconds of the confrontation. Maya sat cross-legged on their worn couch, gripping her father's hand as they watched. Tears streamed down her face as D.C. Cole appeared on screen, dressed sharply in a suit. "I was wrong to stay silent when I first learned about this," D.C. said, his usual confident smile replaced by a serious expression. "Eli Bennett is exactly the kind of role model our community needs. He chose to protect someone vulnerable, even at great personal cost. That's real courage, not just dunking over me in a charity game." The phone started ringing almost immediately. Coach Ruth called first, her voice thick with emotion. "Have you seen it? The whole town's watching." Throughout the morning, support poured in through calls, texts, and social media. The local coffee shop put up a sign reading, "Free coffee for Coach Bennett." Children made posters defending him, and parents posted them all over town. By mid-morning, Principal Whitcomb called an emergency meeting with the school board and union representatives. Eli sat in the conference room, his injured knee propped carefully on a chair as Whitcomb cleared his throat. "Mr. Bennett," he began, shuffling papers nervously. "In light of new evidence and overwhelming community support, your suspension is immediately lifted." He paused, adjusting his glasses. "Furthermore, we believe this situation has highlighted a needed change in our policies." The union representative, Ms. Martinez, stepped forward. "We've drafted what we're calling the dual-role pilot program. It would allow custodial staff to serve as paid mentors and assistant coaches with proper training and guidelines. You'd be our first participant, if you're willing." Eli's hands trembled slightly as he accepted the documents. "This isn't just about me," he said quietly. "There are good people on our staff who have so much to offer these kids." "We know," Whitcomb nodded, looking humbled. "Sometimes it takes a moment like this to open our eyes." The local news crews waited outside, but Eli slipped out the back entrance. His knee throbbed as he made his way slowly through the halls, the familiar squeak of his crutches echoing off the lockers. As he approached the gym, he heard the familiar bounce of basketballs and squeak of sneakers. He pushed open the heavy door to find the entire girls' team running drills. They stopped mid-motion when they saw him. For a moment, everything was silent except for the hollow echo of a forgotten basketball bouncing away. Then Kayla stepped forward, her usual tough expression softening. "Welcome back, Coach Bennett." The whole team erupted in cheers and applause, the sound bouncing off the high ceiling. Maya ran to hug him carefully, mindful of his crutches. Coach Ruth stood at half court, wiping her eyes and trying to maintain her composure. All right," Eli said, his own voice rough with emotion. "Less cheering, more practicing. Regional finals aren't going to win themselves." The girls laughed and returned to their drills, but there was a new energy in their movements. Eli made his way to the bench, where Coach Ruth had already set up a chair for his injured leg. "I hear they're calling it the Bennett Rule," she said, sitting beside him. "Just hope I can live up to it," he replied, watching Maya sink a perfect jump shot. "You already have," Ruth said simply, handing him a clipboard. "Now, about that pizza box play." The afternoon sun streamed through the high windows, casting long rays across the polished floor. The rhythmic sound of bouncing balls, squeaking shoes, and young voices filled the air. The familiar symphony of hope and possibility that had always made this gym feel like home. The familiar squeak of basketball shoes echoed through the Maple Ridge High gymnasium as the girls' team ran through their plays. Afternoon sunlight streamed through the high windows, casting long shadows across the polished hardwood floor. Eli Bennett sat on a metal stool near the baseline, his injured knee wrapped in an elastic bandage, watching intently as Coach Ruth directed traffic. "Good movement, ladies. Keep that spacing wide." Coach Ruth clapped her hands, encouraging the fluid motion of the offense. The rhythmic bounce of basketballs and quick footsteps created a symphony Eli had grown to love. Maya dribbled at the top of the key, her face showing intense concentration. Kayla Hart set a solid screen, allowing Maya to curl around it perfectly. Without hesitation, Maya rose up, her form exactly as they'd practiced countless times, elbow in, follow-through held high. The ball arced through the air with perfect rotation. Swish. The net barely moved as the ball fell through. For a moment, the gym went quiet. Then Kayla's voice broke the silence with an excited whoop. She rushed over to Maya, hand raised high for a triumphant high five. "That's what I'm talking about, Bennett." Kayla's smile was infectious as she slapped Maya's palm. "Just like that, in the big game." Eli couldn't help but beam with pride. He shifted on his stool, wincing slightly at the twinge in his knee, but the discomfort couldn't dim his joy at seeing his daughter's progress. Maya glanced his way, and he gave her a small nod that spoke volumes. "Run it again," Coach Ruth called out, but her usual stern expression had softened into a smile. Same intensity, same precision. The team reset their positions, and Eli watched as they moved through the play once more. He noticed how Maya's confidence had grown over the season, how she no longer second-guessed herself before taking shots. The shy girl who'd barely wanted to try out was now moving with purpose and determination. Practice continued until the late afternoon sun painted the gym in amber hues. As the girls gathered their gear, many stopped to fist bump Eli on their way out. Kayla lingered behind, helping Maya collect scattered basketballs. "Remember what we talked about, Maya," Kayla said, tucking a ball under her arm. "Trust your shot. You've put in the work." Maya nodded, her face serious but determined. "Thanks, Kayla. See you tomorrow?" "Bright and early," Kayla confirmed, then turned to Eli. "You too, Coach Bennett. Don't forget your ice pack this time." Eli chuckled, carefully standing from his stool. "Yes, Captain." The drive home was quiet. Both father and daughter lost in their thoughts. Their small apartment welcomed them with familiar comfort. The slightly crooked family photos on the walls, the worn but clean furniture, the basketball trophies Maya had started collecting that sat proudly on a shelf. Eli settled into his recliner, propping his knee up as Maya brought him an ice pack wrapped in a thin towel. The cold seeped through, bringing relief to the swollen joint. On the coffee table between them, they spread out the playbook they'd created together, a collection of sketches, notes, and strategies drawn on everything from proper paper to pizza box corners. "Let's go over the inbound plays one more time," Eli suggested, pointing to a diagram. "Remember, they'll probably try to deny Kayla the ball, so we need to be ready with our second and third options." Maya leaned forward, her finger tracing the X's and O's. "What if they press full court, like they did in the semifinal?" "Good thinking. See this setup here?" Eli sketched a quick addition to the diagram. "If they press, we can use their aggression against them. Quick passes. Don't let them trap you in the corners. Trust your teammates to be in the right spots." They spent the next hour reviewing plays and scenarios, Maya asking thoughtful questions that made Eli's heart swell with pride. She had always been smart, taking after her mother that way, but watching her apply that intelligence to basketball, seeing her grow both on and off the court, filled him with a deep sense of gratitude. As the evening wound down, Maya helped her father up from the recliner. His knee was stiff, but the ice had helped. They moved through their nighttime routine, dishes washed, lunch packed for tomorrow, Maya's uniform laid out for the game. In the narrow hallway between their bedrooms, they stopped as they had every night since Maya was little. Eli placed his hand gently on his daughter's head, and they both bowed in prayer. The familiar words came easily, comfort wrapped in faith. "Lord, thank you for this day," Eli began softly. "Thank you for the gift of family, for the strength to face our challenges, for the love that guides us through." Maya's voice joined his, quiet but steady. "Thank you for our basketball family, for the chances to grow, for keeping us together. Watch over us as we rest," they finished together, "and give us courage for tomorrow's journey. Amen." When they opened their eyes, Maya hugged her father tightly. "Love you, Dad." "Love you too, sweetheart." Eli kissed the top of her head. "Get some good sleep." They separated to their rooms, but Eli could hear Maya's pre-bedtime routine through the thin walls, the soft swish of her mimicking shooting form, the quiet bounce of the small foam ball she'd had since childhood, the sounds of preparation, of determination, of hope. A light snow dusted the courthouse steps as Eli and Maya Bennett made their way up the granite stairs. Maya's small hand gripped her father's tightly, both of them bundled against the February chill in winter coats. Eli's knee ached with each step, but he kept his face calm for Maya's sake. Inside, the marble halls echoed with their footsteps. Eli's dress shoes, borrowed from his neighbor Mr. Rodriguez, clicked against the floor. Maya had worn her best blue dress, the one they'd found at the thrift store last spring. Her hair was neatly braided, the way her mother used to do it. "You okay, sweetheart?" Eli asked softly, glancing down at his daughter. Maya nodded, her chin lifting with determination. "I know what to say, Dad. I practiced." They found their seats in the small courtroom, wood-paneled and solemn. Their lawyer, Ms. Peterson, greeted them with a reassuring smile. She'd taken their case pro bono after hearing about Eli at church. Across the aisle, Lorraine and Charles Harding sat stiffly in expensive winter wear. Lorraine's pearl necklace caught the fluorescent light. Charles kept adjusting his tie, his eyes darting occasionally toward Maya. Reverend Lila Monroe slipped into the row behind them, touching Eli's shoulder gently. "The whole congregation is praying for you both," she whispered. The bailiff called them to rise as Judge Margaret Wheeler entered, her black robe sweeping behind her. Her face was lined, but kind, as she surveyed the small gathering. "This is a hearing regarding the custody petition for Maya Bennett," she began, her voice clear and measured. "I understand there are concerns about the child's current living situation." The Hardings' lawyer stood first, outlining their position in careful terms, their financial resources, the private school opportunities they could provide, their concerns about stability. Eli felt Maya's hand tighten in his. Ms. Peterson rose next, presenting documentation of Eli's employment history, Maya's excellent grades, and letters from teachers praising their strong relationship. She described the recent events at the school, explaining how Eli had become a mentor to many students while maintaining his custodial duties. "Your Honor," Reverend Lila's voice carried clearly when she was called to testify. "I've known Eli Bennett for 14 years, since before Maya was born. When his wife Sarah fell ill, he showed extraordinary strength and dedication as a father. He worked multiple jobs to provide for his family while caring for both his dying wife and their infant daughter." The Reverend's eyes were warm as she continued. "What I've witnessed is a man who puts his child's needs above everything else. He may not be wealthy, but he's rich in character, wisdom, and love. The way he's helped our community's young people while raising Maya speaks volumes about his values." Judge Wheeler nodded thoughtfully, then turned to Maya. "Would you like to speak, young lady?" Maya stood, smoothing her dress. Her voice trembled slightly at first, but grew stronger with each word. "My dad is my hero," she said simply. "He works really hard to take care of me, and he always makes time to help me with homework or practice basketball. We don't have a lot of fancy things, but we have everything that matters." She took a deep breath. "I know my grandparents want what's best for me, but my dad already gives me that. He teaches me about integrity and kindness. He shows me that what matters isn't your job title or how much money you have, it's how you treat people and whether you do your best. Lorraine dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. Charles stared at his folded hands. Your Honor, Lorraine suddenly spoke up, her voice wavering. May I say something? The judge gestured for her to continue. Lorraine glanced at her husband, who nodded slightly. We'd like to withdraw our petition. She turned to face Eli and Maya. We were wrong. We were so focused on what we thought Maya needed that we couldn't see what she already has, a wonderful father who gives her everything essential for a happy life. Charles cleared his throat. We'd like to be part of Maya's life, but not by forcing our way in. We're offering our support, no conditions attached. Perhaps, he smiled hesitantly at his granddaughter, we could come to some basketball games? Maya's face lit up, and even Eli felt tears prickling at his eyes. Judge Wheeler smiled. Well, this makes my job easier. Petition withdrawn and dismissed. She looked directly at Maya. You're a very fortunate young lady to have so many people who love you. The tension in the room dissolved like morning frost in sunlight. Reverend Lila hugged Maya, while Charles approached Eli somewhat awkwardly. We truly are sorry, he said quietly. We'd like to help with her college fund, if you'll let us, and maybe join you for dinner sometimes? Eli nodded, extending his hand. She'd like that. Thank you. Outside, the snow had stopped, leaving the world crisp and clean. Eli and Maya stood on the courthouse steps, their breath visible in the cold air. Maya threw her arms around her father's waist, and he held her close, his heart full. Love you, Dad, she mumbled into his coat. Love you too, sweetheart, he whispered back. More than anything. The locker room hummed with nervous energy as the girls adjusted their uniforms and laced up their sneakers. The regional championship banner hung just outside the door, a constant reminder of what was at stake. Eli leaned on his crutches near the whiteboard, watching his daughter Maya take slow, deliberate breaths while Kayla paced the floor, her game face already locked in. Coach Ruth finished writing the starting lineup and stepped aside, nodding to Eli. He cleared his throat, and 15 pairs of eyes turned to him. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as he looked at each face in turn. Ladies, he began, his voice soft but steady. I want to tell you something about today. This morning, I sat in a courtroom wondering if I'd get to keep being Maya's dad. He paused as Maya's eyes met his. But you know what got me through? Knowing I had a whole other family right here, in this room. The girls sat straighter on the wooden benches. Some reached for their teammates' hands. Tonight isn't about winning a trophy. It's about playing for each other. Every sprint, every screen, every loose ball, do it for the teammate next to you. That's what family does. Kayla stood up, her eyes fierce. Family on 3, she called. The team huddled, hands stacked in the center. 1, 2, 3, family. The game started fast. Their opponents, the Highland Hawks, pressed full court from the opening whistle. Kayla broke the press with quick passes, finding teammates for layups. Maya hit an early three-pointer, and Eli pumped his fist from his seat on the bench. But Highland wouldn't go away. Their center dominated the paint, and by halftime the score was tied at 32. The third quarter saw 4 lead changes. Every basket felt like a battle. Coach Ruth and Eli worked together, calling plays and making adjustments. With 1 minute left in the fourth quarter, Highland led by 3. Kayla drove baseline and kicked out to Maya, who pump-faked and drew a foul on a 3-point attempt. The referee's whistle pierced the roaring crowd. Maya walked to the free throw line, her shoulders tight. Eli wished he could stand beside her, but all he could do was watch. The first shot left her hand smoothly but spun out. The Highland crowd cheered. Maya bounced the ball twice, then closed her eyes. Her lips moved silently, the same prayer they'd said together that morning. When she opened her eyes, Eli saw her mother's determination there. The second shot arced perfectly and swished through. Tie game. Highland brought the ball up with 30 seconds left. Their point guard dribbled at the top of the key, waiting to take the last shot. But Kayla had been studying her moves all game. As the guard crossed over, Kayla pounced, poking the ball free. It bounced toward midcourt. "Time out!" Eli shouted as Kayla scooped up the loose ball. The referee's whistle blew with 8 seconds showing on the clock. The girls huddled around the bench, breathing hard. Coach Ruth handed Eli the whiteboard. His hands were steady as he drew up the play, the same lob pattern from his viral dunk, adapted for Kayla's speed. "Remember that night with D.C. Cole?" he asked, looking at his players. "Sometimes the best play is the simplest one. Maya, you set the back screen. Sarah, you're the decoy cutting through. Kayla, just like we practiced, trust your teammates." The girls nodded, determination replacing nervousness in their eyes. They broke the huddle and lined up for the inbound pass. The referee handed the ball to Sarah. Highland's defenders crouched, ready. Sarah slapped the ball, starting the 5-second count. Maya set her screen. Kayla burst from the corner, cutting hard toward the basket. The lob pass floated high, just like on that charity night that felt so long ago. Kayla rose up, caught the ball at its highest point, and laid it softly off the backboard as the buzzer sounded. The ball rolled around the rim once, twice, and dropped through. The gym exploded. Players and fans rushed the court as confetti rained down from somewhere above. Through the chaos, Maya found her way to Eli, wrapping her arms around him as his crutches clattered to the floor. They held each other at center court, their embrace saying everything words couldn't. "We did it, Dad," Maya whispered against his chest. "Our family did it." Above them, the final score glowed on the scoreboard. Home 67, visitors 65. But the numbers hardly mattered now. What mattered was this moment, this embrace, this feeling of being exactly where they belonged. The ladder wobbled slightly as Maya climbed toward the basketball hoop, scissors in hand. The gym lights caught the tears of joy streaming down her face as she reached for her piece of the championship net. Below, her teammates bounced on their toes, chanting her name to the rhythm of the school band's victory song. Eli watched from his spot near center court, still propped on his crutches but grinning from ear to ear. His knee throbbed, but the pain couldn't touch the warmth spreading through his chest. Coach Ruth stood beside him, her clipboard tucked under one arm while she clapped along with the crowd. "Your daughter's got heart, Bennett," she said, nudging his shoulder. "Just like her old man." The bleachers were still packed, even though the game had ended 20 minutes ago. Parents, students, and community members had stuck around for the net-cutting ceremony, a tradition as old as basketball itself. Even the opposing team's fans had stayed, caught up in the infectious joy of the moment. Kayla was next up the ladder, moving with the same confidence she'd shown on that final play. She snipped her portion of the net with a flourish, holding it high as camera flashes popped throughout the gym. "This one's for you, Mr. B," she called down, and another cheer rolled through the crowd. D.C. Cole made his way through the celebrating players, stopping to high-five and congratulate each girl. He looked different from the polished media personality who'd first visited months ago, more genuine, somehow. When he reached Eli, he grabbed the microphone from the announcer's table. Hold up," DC's voice boomed through the speakers. The gym gradually quieted. "I've got something to say." The girls gathered around, still bouncing with leftover adrenaline. Maya slipped under Eli's arm, tucking herself against his side like she used to do when she was little. "Tonight we saw something special," DC continued. "Not just a championship game, though that last play," he whistled. "That was poetry in motion. But what we really saw was what happens when someone believes in you. When someone shows up every day, mop in hand or whistle around neck, ready to teach and support and inspire." Eli felt his face growing warm as DC turned to face him directly. "Mr. Bennett, my company has been watching. We've seen how you transform this program, not with fancy facilities or expensive training, but with heart, with dignity, with respect for every single person who walks through those gym doors." A murmur rippled through the crowd. DC smiled. That's why I'm proud to announce that Starting Five Shoes will be fully funding the new Open Gym Study Hall program right here at Maple Ridge High. A place where students can work on their game and their grades, with guidance from people who understand that sometimes the best teachers are the ones who keep the lights on. The gym erupted. Maya squeezed Eli tighter as DC raised his hand for silence. And who better to run this program than the man who showed us all what real leadership looks like? Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your new Director of Player Development, Mr. Eli Bennett. The roar was deafening. The girls' team surrounded Eli in a group hug, careful of his crutches. Coach Ruth wiped at her eyes with her sleeve. Even Principal Whitcomb was clapping enthusiastically from his spot near the scorer's table. The position comes with full benefits, DC added with a wink, including excellent health insurance. Might help with that knee. Eli found himself being guided toward the ladder. The girls steadied it, while Coach Ruth held his crutches. Slowly, carefully, he climbed the rungs. At the top, he paused, taking in the scene below him. The faces of his daughter, his team, his community, all upturned, all shining with pride and affection. His hands trembled slightly as he cut the final piece of the net. The synthetic strands parted with a soft snick, and suddenly he was holding it. This small piece of white rope that represented so much more than just a game. The crowd began to sing the school fight song, voices rising and falling in familiar waves. As Eli descended the ladder, he noticed the Hardings, Maya's grandparents, standing near the exit. They gave him a small wave and a smile, and he nodded back. There would be time later for coffee, for conversation, for healing old wounds. Someone pressed the game ball into his hands, already covered with signatures from the team. Kayla had written, "Thanks for teaching us to soar," across the leather and silver marker. Maya's message was simpler. "Love you, Dad." The celebration continued around him, pictures being taken, hugs being shared, plans being made for ice cream at the diner. Eli reached into his coat pocket and carefully tucked away his piece of the net, right next to his heart. The nylon strands were rough against his fingers, real and solid and earned. Coach Ruth appeared at his elbow with his crutches. "Not bad for a janitor," she teased, eyes twinkling. Eli accepted the crutches with a laugh. Not bad for a team that started with pizza box plays. The gym lights gleamed overhead, turning the polished floor into a mirror that reflected back all their joy. Eli patted his pocket, feeling the net inside, and smiled. Some victories were measured in points on a scoreboard, but others, the ones that really mattered, were measured in moments like these. Sunlight streamed through the high windows of Maple Ridge's gymnasium, painting golden rectangles across the polished floor. The afternoon buzz of the open gym program filled the space, with life basketballs bouncing, sneakers squeaking, and laughter echoing off the walls. Eli Bennett stood near the entrance, clipboard in hand, watching the organized chaos with quiet pride. At one hoop, Mr. Torres, the night shift custodian, demonstrated proper shooting form to a group of middle schoolers. By the bleachers, Mrs. Washington from the cafeteria staff helped students with math homework between games of horse. Maya dribbled between orange cones at center court, leading a group of younger girls through the same footwork drill that had helped her gain confidence months ago. Her ponytail swished with each precise movement, and her voice carried clear instructions across the floor. "Keep your head up while you dribble," she called out. "That's it, Sarah. Much better." The main doors creaked open, letting in a fresh spring breeze. Eli turned to see Lorraine and Charles Harding step inside, looking slightly out of place in their casual but clearly expensive weekend wear. But their smiles were genuine as they watched their granddaughter in her element. "This is quite something," Lorraine said, her eyes taking in the scene. The usual edge was gone from her voice, replaced by something closer to wonder. "Coffee?" Eli gestured toward the small hospitality station they'd set up near the trophy case. The parents donated one of those fancy machines. Charles chuckled. "Sounds perfect." They settled into the plastic chairs around a small table, watching Maya's drill wrap up. She caught sight of them and waved, her smile bright and unguarded. She's really flourishing here, Charles observed, stirring cream into his coffee. The way she handles those younger kids, there's real leadership there. Eli nodded. She's teaching them the same things she learned. Not just basketball confidence, patience, working through frustration. We were wrong, Lorraine said suddenly, her hands wrapped tight around her cup. About so many things, Eli. About what Maya needed. About you. The gym's cheerful chaos continued around them, but their corner felt quieter, more intimate. Eli took a careful sip of coffee before responding. You were trying to protect her, he said. I understand that. Same as I was. Yes, but our way would have. Lorraine paused, watching Maya high-five her students as they headed for water breaks. It would have cut her off from all of this, from who she really is. Charles reached over and squeezed his wife's hand. We'd like to be part of it now, if you'll let us. Not to control or direct, just to be here. To support you both. Maya needs her family, Eli said. All of her family. She always has. Lorraine dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. I see now what D.C. Cole meant in that interview about you being the best kind of champion. It was never about that dunk at all, was it? Eli smiled, watching Mr. Torres celebrate with a student who just made their first three-pointer. It's about giving kids a chance to surprise themselves, to see what they're capable of when someone believes in them. The school board is impressed, Charles mentioned. I hear they're looking to expand the program to other districts. One step at a time, Eli laughed. But yeah, we're dreaming big. Study sessions, mentoring, maybe even some college prep workshops. The whole community pitching in. Maya jogged over during a break, slightly out of breath but glowing. Did you see Sarah's crossover? We've been working on that all week. Beautiful footwork, Lorraine said warmly. Just like your father taught you. Maya beamed at the praise, then turned to Eli. Dad, can I show Grandma and Grandpa the new shooting machine DC's company donated? Of course, honey. Eli watched as Maya led her grandparents across the gym, talking animatedly about trajectory analysis and proper arc. The afternoon light had shifted, casting longer shadows now, but the gym remained full of energy. A pickup game between custodians and teachers had started on one court, while younger kids practiced layups on another. Someone had put music on the sound system, not too loud, just enough to add to the warmth of the atmosphere. Eli stood and stretched, his knee much better after the surgery the school's insurance had covered. He gathered the empty coffee cups, nodding hello to Reverend Lila, who'd just arrived to help with the afternoon study group. At the far end of the court, Maya was demonstrating a shot while her grandparents watched attentively. Charles had shed his sport coat and was trying to copy her form, making Maya giggle. Even Lorraine had relaxed her perfect posture, leaning against the padded wall with a genuine smile. The sound of laughter and bouncing balls filled the gym, a rhythm as natural as breathing, as hopeful as prayer. This was what winning really looked like, Eli thought. Not just games or championships, but moments like these, family finding its way back together, barriers coming down one brick at a time, and every single person in this space feeling like they belonged. The evening sun cast long shadows through the gymnasium windows, painting the hardwood floor in warm amber stripes. Maya Bennett sat on the bottom row of bleachers, her new STEM Hoops camp t-shirt still crisp and fresh, the logo combining a basketball and molecular structure gleaming under the gym lights. Eli knelt before her, his weathered hands working with practiced care on her shoelaces. His knee brace peeked out beneath his khaki shorts, a reminder of the winter's trials now healing with time and therapy. Double knots, always double knots, he reminded her, just as he had since her first pair of sneakers. Can't have you tripping during those chemistry demonstrations. Maya grinned, watching his fingers work. Dad, I'm not going to spill any solutions just because my shoe came untied. Hey, safety first in the lab and on the court. He finished the second shoe with a firm tug. There you go, good as new. Around them, other camp participants filtered into the gym, their excited chatter bouncing off the walls. Some carried notebooks filled with basketball plays and scientific formulas. Others clutched water bottles decorated with stickers from both worlds. Coach Ruth stood near the scorer's table, reviewing the evening schedule with the camp's science instructor. Maya stood up, testing her newly secured shoes with a little hop. "These feel perfect." She paused, a mischievous glint in her eye. "You know, Dad, everyone's been talking about how they've never seen your famous dunk in person." Eli chuckled, shaking his head. "Maya Bennett, you know better than to do the dunk, do the dunk," a small voice called out from across the gym. Heads turned, and suddenly more voices joined in, the chant growing stronger with each repetition. "Do the dunk, do the dunk." Even Coach Ruth joined in, clapping her hands to the rhythm. The science instructor wheeled out the foam practice dummy they used for defensive drills, positioning it at the free throw line with an encouraging thumbs up. Eli looked at his daughter, who was now bouncing on the balls of her feet with anticipation. "You put them up to this, didn't you?" "Maybe," she grinned. "Come on, Dad. Show them what a janitor-turned-director can do." He pretended to consider it for a moment, then carefully set his crutches against the bleachers. His knee had healed enough for light activity, and his physical therapist had actually encouraged controlled movement. Still, he made a show of stretching his arms and legs, drawing playful groans from his audience. All right, he called out, his voice carrying over the excited murmurs. "But only because my daughter asked so nicely." He winked at Maya, who beamed back at him. The crowd parted, creating a clear path to the basket. Someone tossed him a basketball, which he caught with familiar ease. The leather felt warm and right in his hands, like greeting an old friend. Eli bounced the ball twice, testing its response against the floor. He looked at the foam dummy, so much less intimidating than DC Cole had been that winter night that changed everything. The memory brought a smile to his face. "Ready?" he called out. "Ready," the crowd responded in unison. He took 3 measured steps backward, then began his approach. His gait was slower than before, more deliberate, but his movements carried the same grace that had stunned the crowd months ago. As he neared the dummy, he gathered himself, the ball secure in his hands. The gym fell silent. Eli rose from the floor. His body, remembering the motion like a dancer, recalls a favorite routine. He glided over the foam figure with surprising gentleness, as if gravity had decided to be kind to him one more time. At the apex of his flight, he raised the ball high, then brought it down through the hoop with just enough force to make it count. The ball slipped through the net with a soft swish, the chain links dancing with a sound like wind chimes in a summer breeze. Like a hymn sung in whispers. The gym erupted in cheers and applause, but Eli's eyes found Maya first. She stood with her hands clasped over her heart, pride and joy radiating from her face like sunlight. A parent's phone caught the moment her pure, unrestrained happiness captured in the warm glow of the gymnasium lights. He landed carefully, knees flexing to absorb the impact, and straightened up to find himself surrounded by admiring students. But before anyone could ask for an encore, Coach Ruth's whistle cut through the celebration. "All right, everyone. Now that Mr. Bennett has properly inspired us all, let's get this camp started." She gestured toward the various stations set up around the gym, each combining basketball fundamentals with scientific principles. Maya rushed over to help her father back to his crutches, but not before wrapping him in a quick, fierce hug. "That was amazing, Dad," she whispered. "Thanks, sweetheart." He squeezed her shoulder. "Now go show them what you've got, both on the court and in the lab." She nodded and jogged off to join her group, her ponytail swaying with each step, her shoelaces still perfectly double-knotted. Eli watched her go, noting how she moved with a confidence that hadn't been there before. She carried herself like someone who knew exactly where she belonged. The gym lights hummed steadily overhead, their warm glow illuminating the scene. Students gathering around learning stations, the foam dummy standing sentinel at the free throw line, and the basketball net still swaying gently from its brief moment of glory. Someone's phone caught the last traces of Maya's joyful applause before being tucked away, preserving the moment when a father's love and a daughter's pride merged into something as pure as the swish of a perfect shot. What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below, and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you thought this was just the beginning, you're right. Click through and see where the story takes you next. If you enjoyed the story of Eli Len Bennett, I handpicked the next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.